Hi, this is Farida Lavangee from Turning Point Chartered Accountants. Today, I wanted to chat about what are the key steps that nonprofits should be focusing on for audit readiness. So we all know that an audit can be quite stressful, whether you're doing a donor audit, whether you're doing a statutory audit. It generally is quite stressful for those involved. And often the stress points comes around the fact that there's generally a lack of understanding of what is expected of the organization when they have an audit. There's also the stress of maybe the accounting records are not actually in, the right, it's not finalized, or it's also not in the correct format, which will allow both for donor or for statutory audit to extract the information required. One of the other key challenges that organizations face is that they also don't have the supporting documents available. So obviously from ensuring that you're prepared for an audit, one of the key things is to make sure that you're starting ahead of time. So you're not preparing for your audit literally maybe a month before the audit is to start. You're going to be starting ahead. So as we're closing off 2024, a lot of organizations will be closing off their financial year end. So now is the time to obviously start making sure that all of your documentation is available for your auditors for next year. And then to start the new financial year, put in processes from the beginning to make sure that it's going to be more streamlined when you actually get to do your financial audit. Okay, so if we have to focus on what are some of the documents that are required to prepare for an audit, obviously the most important thing is having your accounting records up to date. And that means it needs to be captured for the entire financial year. It should include all of your bank accounts, for example. All of your income and expenses are recorded. And then along with having the accounting records, the other aspect is to then obviously have the supporting documents. When we talk about supporting documents, it's quite a variety. I will just maybe highlight some of the key things that should be available. From an income perspective, copies of your grant agreements, copies of your 18A certificates that you have issued during the financial year, if you are 18A registered, copies of any in-kind donations that you may have received, the confirmation letters from the donors stating how much they have donated or what they have donated to your organization itself. And then if we're looking at from an expense perspective, having copies of your invoices, your payment requisitions, or your approval of your payments, from an employee perspective, having your employment contracts, your payroll reports, and then obviously any tax compliance matters, for example, your VAT 201s, if you are registered for VAT, your EMP 201s, your EMP 501s. So in order for you to be prepared, these are some of the documents that you would need. If we are talking about 18A as well, just a reminder that obviously SARS implemented some new requirements on the 1st of March 2023, which was actually last year, as to what needed to be included in your 18A certificates. So just to ensure obviously that you are compliant with that, and that you're also now complying with SARS new requirements of having your 18A uploaded to them via the IT3D process. Now I wanted to cover some effective financial planning strategies for nonprofits for 2025. As a nonprofit, your budget is one of the most important documents for the organization, because the budget allows you to see what is it that you want to achieve and what resources do you have available to get to that. It's obviously a guiding document for any organization, which means it's one of the most critical documents that you could have. As you're setting your budgets for 2025, obviously you need to make sure that that budget covers all of your activities. So not just program related costs, but also organizational costs itself. And it should be a fair representation of what is it that you want to achieve. Now, often organizations struggle with how to set their budget. And my advice would be is you start off looking at how have you performed historically against the budgets that you have set. And what this will allow you to do is it allow you to see, okay, has your budget setting process been reasonable in the past? So that will form your basis for setting your budget for 2025. Once you've looked at your historical performance, you then look at, okay, what is it that I want to achieve in this next financial year? What sort of activities am I looking to do? What is my beneficiaries that I'm trying to reach? Am I trying to implement new programs and projects. And if you are trying to do that, then you have to look at, obviously, from a funding perspective, where is that money going to come? Do I have reserves available? Do I have contracts with certain funders that are already been signed that's going to carry me through 2025? Or do I need to go out on an aggressive fundraising activity where maybe I need to now start sending in proposals, or I need to do some sort of fundraising activity as an organization? Okay, as an organization itself. Once you look at all of these factors, you can then plan effectively for 2025, which means you will have a roadmap as to where is it that you want to get to, and you also have a plan as to how to get there. As a nonprofit that has funding from donors, right? Often donors will support an organization if they believe in their objectives or their activities that they want to do. But another key factor as to why a donor will continue to support an organization is if the organization's finances are actually managed properly and effectively, if there's transparency in their financial reporting. What does this mean to you as a nonprofit? Well, transparency means that your financial records should clearly show what is it that you have done. Often I've come across financial statements for nonprofits and I read them and they look as though this is a normal trading organization. It doesn't actually show what were their activities, what were their projects that they have done during the year. Now, as a nonprofit, you want your financial reporting or your financial statements to actually showcase what is it that your organization does. And if you have transparent reporting, it will allow you to get more donors because donors are interested in those organizations where there's transparency. And ultimately, this will lead to the long-term sustainability of your organization because you're going to be able to attract larger donors who focus on these core areas. Some of the common challenges that nonprofits face, I think one of the biggest challenges a nonprofit will face is obviously the lack of funding or the reliance on funding, I should say, because most organizations rely on funding from either large corporates or from overseas funders or even just donations from the general public. So this reliance on funding is obviously a challenge for organizations because it does mean that you are sort of restricted in what is it that you want to achieve because you always can have to work with what funding is available to you. A common solution, or not a common solution, but a solution to address that issue may be for an organization to look into what are the other means of earning sustainable income. There's a common myth that as a nonprofit, you can't actually have income that you are earning other than maybe from donations. You are allowed to, even if you're a not-for-profit organization. So what I'm trying to say is that maybe organizations need to look at sustainability. So how is it that they can generate income which is not totally reliant on a donor or a funder deciding to give money to the organization? Various organizations look at sustainable income in various ways. For example, they might have investments, or there might be a property that is owned by the organization which is generating rental income, or maybe the organization does training for other nonprofits or for corporate sometimes, where they are now earning sustainable income. And this will obviously allow the organization to grow. So that's one challenge, is the funding issue. The other challenge that organizations generally face is because, and I think it stems from the fact that it's in sort of like a cycle because of the lack of funding issue. You often tend to struggle to find, for example, in your admin or your finance role, you struggle to get the correct person in because you don't have the funding available to pay an experienced person, which then has a knock-on effect on your reporting or on your financials that you are preparing. Another challenge or common challenge that nonprofits face is that they are often using very outdated accounting systems. So their reporting is not in line with what donors are looking for. So they do struggle to maintain or to comply with all of the donor requirements. They also struggle to generate accounting records on a timely basis so that the board can review these on a quarterly or a monthly basis so informed decisions can be made. So using financial reporting tools such as Xero will help an organization, not just obviously to save money because it is cheaper than some of the other software or platforms that are out there, but it also saves time. Time for the person who is responsible for financial reporting because you can now streamline that process. And if that person who also generally has multiple other roles and responsibilities within the organization, they can now have more time to actually focus on those areas as well, which then means that as an organization overall, you will benefit from these financial reporting tools that you can implement. In terms of the NPO organizations or those responsible for running the organizations, how do you prepare for 2025? I think the key thing is obviously to look back and see what were some of the positives and the negatives from your 2024 and how can you improve on that. I think that's probably the most effective way to plan for the future, is to see what has happened in the past and how we handled that and were there any takeaways for us.